I'm George Siegel, and this is the Move the World podcast. Every week, we feature interviews with people dedicated to making the world a better place. Thank you for joining me today. My first documentary film was called License to Parent. It was about how parenting is the most important job in the world, yet anybody can get that job. And as a result, there are a lot of problems that we see in the world on a daily basis as a result of this. Well, my guest today is a woman who went from not really thinking she wanted to be a parent to ending up being the mother of four. Three of them came along as surprise triplets. That's quite a surprise. Sue Donlan, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, George.
Now, that is pretty amazing. I want to touch on that first, because when I was reading about you, kind of seemed like a reluctant person for having children. I wouldn't have pegged you as somebody who really wanted that. And then you had triplets.
Oh, yeah. No, it's comical. Anyone that knew me growing up is still laughing and chuckling over how I, of all people, would have ended up with natural triplets just trying to have my second baby. It was definitely a huge surprise. And yes, you're right. I wasn't the sort of person that, wanted to grab somebody's baby and cuddle them or, babysit for money. I was not interested in the life of, I didn't see myself as being a mom. I didn't see that in my future. It wasn't something I was actively pursuing until I met my husband and he wanted a family. And I thought, how hard could it be?
I guess you found out. And it's interesting because when my wife and I are out and we see people with cute little babies or whatever, she's always looking at them, and I honestly don't even notice them. Mm-hmm. I think it's just not in my focus. Maybe my eyesight is going as I'm getting older, or I just don't really, I'm not drawn to that. So I can relate to the feeling, but you certainly changed and rather successfully.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yes, I did change. I stepped up and it's funny because having kids really can unlock a lot within you if you're open to it and you allow it to. We go from selfish to unselfish. We care more about the world. Everything takes on a different meaning. And that is pretty much, what happened to me. And I became a lot more in tune with myself and in touch with my gifts and my ability to use, psychology and read people and hone their individual personalities and just create that independence and that autonomy that turned out to be a skill set that made me a better parent, as opposed to the one who was so entrenched in being a mom and wanting, what do they think of me and how, if I say no, will they be mad? Like I think my attitude prior to having kids set me up for being a better parent in terms of just kind of not being controlling and not having the need to be involved in so much. It was better for them and better for me.
Now, parenting is a full-time job, being a mom in a lot of instances, but you have a lot more than that. So people need to know more about you. You have Ask Mom Parenting. You're a mom of four, as we've said, wife of a career military officer, which means he was gone a lot because he had to serve the country, founder of 3 businesses, an award-winning author. What do you do in your spare time? I mean, that's a lot.
I work. I'm a typical entrepreneur and I work and my mind is always going. I'm creative. I've got ideas. I'm already thinking about my second book. I just, my mind is just always going. That's all I can say, really. In my spare time, I just have downtime with my husband. I like to read, we enjoy our downtime, but I work from home, which makes it a little bit easier and I guess trickier to walk away, but I love what I do. So it's okay.
Now, we were talking a little bit before we started rolling for the podcast. I told you I actually read the book.
Yeah.
And the name of the book is Secrets to Parenting Without Giving. And should I say the name or not? I'm going to say Without Giving a Fuck. That's the name of the book.
Yeah.
And, I have 5 kids, so I was fascinated by it. And I really enjoyed it. I mean, already having read your book, it's already changed my parenting style. Really? Because it's made me a lot more conscious of how I'm talking to my children and how they're perceiving that interaction. Because there was a part where you talk about you probably treat strangers better than you treat your kids in a way.
Don't we though? Don't we?
Yeah.
We do. Yeah.
And that really hit home with me. I was like, wow, I'm not even, no wonder I'm not getting the response I want because I'm talking down to them.
That's awesome. Good for you for, putting that mirror on yourself, which is what it takes to be, to show up differently for your kids. I always say that when you're a parent who's dealing with challenging behavior, you have to ask yourself what you can do differently, because the kid's not reacting to us. We're not reacting to your child. The child's reacting to you. So if you change, they change. It's kind of a counterintuitive thought process than what we're taught. We're taught change the behavior, change the child. And that's really kind of coming from a disrespectful point of view that, your child is reacting to you. I appreciate that feedback that you may be taking a little bit extra time to think, how am I showing up for my child? How are my words being perceived and heard? And sometimes it just takes that awareness of a tiny tweak, just one little redirect, and, the kid responds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if I'm leading an organization and have people working under me, and everything's going wrong, I can't just blame them. I mean, sure, you can hire some bad people, but if it's not going well, you have to look at maybe how you're presenting your message and how it's getting through. And if they're not hearing it, then you're not doing your job.
Right. So you want to go back and sort of just regroup and ask yourself, what you can do differently. And kind of that's one of the reasons why I wrote the book and why I mentor, because at least in my case and in the book, I share my journey from, not wanting kids to my growth process. My learning curve was like a vertical line, because I went from, 1 to 4 kids, didn't really want any. Now, oh my God, I got 4 kids. I really had to learn quickly on my feet, and, yelling, and you're doing all these things that we do. We punish and timeouts. And that's really where it crystallizes in people's brains. It's like, oh shit, I've done everything and I don't know what more to do. We think we're doing the right thing, but the behavior never changes. So now we have to say, all right, what more can I do? And we fall flat. We don't know what else there is to do. And that's why I felt compelled to write the book and share these methods so that other parents can learn. My kids are grown now and in college, and I have the benefit of knowing that these methods work.
Now, it's important for me with this podcast. One of the ideas behind it was to find out what people are actually doing to move the world. I mean, I think a lot of it with you is obvious, because I think parenting is a huge problem in this country. You've written a book to address it. But when you think of yourself and put yourself in that situation of defining that, how would you tell people you're moving the world?
Well, I like to say that I am mending the dynamic with how children are being raised between the parent and the child. So there's a dynamic there that the parent feels that they need to be authoritarian, or they need to be controlling, or they need to clamp down, and they don't understand that restriction creates rebellion. They don't know some of these counterintuitive methods that are really rooted in respect. So what I'm really trying to do is reach out to as many parents as I can to teach these methods, to teach this. I really call it the mindset for parenting on purpose. So very deliberate, very intuitive, very, intentional, but it's on purpose. And there is a purpose with what we say and do and why we say and do it. So that is really how I feel like I'm changing the world. And I can't change it fast enough or far enough. Whoever I can get in front of, whoever I can talk to, whoever I can help, I'm so motivated by that. Yes, I have a couple other businesses, but this is my soul's purpose. This is really something I feel strongly about and that I truly believe in.
Yeah, one of the things that came up in the film we made, Licensed to Parent, was you're not just a parent from birth to 17 or 18 years old when they go off to college. That's a lifelong job you're taking on. How you define that role changes over the years. You can go from having to be the leader of the organization to having more of not friends, but you can be friends with your kids when they're older because you communicate differently, but certainly not when they're growing up. There has to be a hierarchy.
I have a word for that. And I've thought very long and hard about the word, because this is something a lot of parents really are sort of divided on. And you've got half the parents that go, well, I don't care what you say, they're my friend. I want to be their friend. And at any age. So they're very, very, emphatic about that. And then there's the parents that are like, screw that. I'm not your friend. I'm your parent. La, la, la. Very divided. Okay. And I have a word that bridges the gap, and that word is partnership. So I teach partnership parenting methods, and being a partner is just a very respectful way of handling, situations with your children and dealing with them, because it's very respectful. And it's, if you read the book, whether our children are adults in training. And if they're adults in training, I know I'm growing my best friend. They're not there yet. they're not my best friend at 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, even as teenagers, because they need my leadership. I'm huge about leadership. That's probably going to be my second book. Leadership is, as parents, we're leaders, we're role models. And I really liken that to even just being an entrepreneur. And, my husband is a general in the Air Force, and he says he's learned more about leadership through just watching me and how I interact with the kids in my business. It's leadership across the board, and leadership is lacking everywhere you look, it's lacking. So we need more leaders. And so the parents, really want to step into that leadership role. And it's, like I said, it's, they're our friend, they're our little buddy, but we're partners. And that's kind of like, I walk with you. I'm not ahead of you, telling you what to do. I'm not pushing you from behind. I don't have an agenda. I'm side by side and I'm there for you, but I'm a facilitator. So that's important designation for me.
Sure. I mean, the parents I know that say that they're friends, quote, friends with their children, tend to be the ones that are very defensive about their children, because if you say something about their child, you're saying something about their friend. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I have a problem with that only because it's hard to punish your friends. It's hard to do discipline and lay down rules for your friends. So I think those are totally different dynamics.
That's a great perspective. I like that. I like what you're saying there. But if you're parenting with in the back of your mind of thinking that eventually this will be your friend, because as an adult, we really now you've got kids that are a little older. So, if you've got your first child and you're cutting your teeth on your first one and you can't really see the future. Now I've got the perspective of this being in my rearview mirror, and I'm like, okay, yeah, 8, 9, 10. I mean, they're going to be your friend. I can see that future for you now. But when you're in that moment, they're not your friend. They really need that leadership. They really need you to role model your goals and your whatever your rules are, whatever your morals are. This is what they need from you most.
Now, you had a teacher that asked you what you said was a brilliant 3-word question that you said sliced through your ignorance and your ego. They said, "Is it working?"
Yeah. Oh yeah. I went to my very first parenting class because at that time, my oldest was 4 and the triplets were 1.5. And my husband was in combat at the time. And I was, we had no friends and family where I was living. I was running my business. I was sleeping at red lights, just exhausted. And my older one was acting out. And I just was talking to the preschool teacher, and she said, "Oh, we offer a parenting class." I'm like, "Okay, I'll take it." And, I guess I could stop yelling, but I felt very justified in the fact that I was screaming at my kids to the point where my throat hurt. I felt very justified. Well, 4 kids under 4. I'm a victim. I got these 3 kids at once, right? And my husband's at war. He's getting shot at. I'm running a business. I mean, come on. Of course I'm yelling. I'm doing a pretty good. I thought she was going to say, "Yeah, get some cough drops. You're doing a great job." So my whiff of arrogance in that moment was really just cut through with this. Okay, great. Is it working? And splash of cold water on the face. Like, shit, I guess it's not really working. So, okay, I straightened up and fly right now. Like I've got a lot to learn. And that was kind of a crystallizing moment for me that, oh shit, I guess I need to learn some new tricks. And that was the beginning of me I wasn't ready to learn anything, or wouldn't have learned anything if I weren't ready to check my ego at the door. And that's why I start with ego in my book, because that's the most important thing for parents, is to realize that we don't have all the answers. And if we think we do, then we're not open to learning. And our children teach us if we're open to it. So when my son's eyes glazed over at me when I was screaming up in his face, like, do it because I said and like it, my older kid was just looking at me with these eyes like, screw you, like if he could talk, he was just looking at me. And I had to say, I got to do better. It's not working. So yeah. If I just,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Oh, because I've modified that to the point where I've always said, how's that working for you? And it's kind of the same thing. It was a realization for you that it's not working. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you don't meet with a person who is open to that possibility that, okay, I guess, that's what do they say? That's the definition of insanity, continuing to do the same thing over and over and expecting different results.
Mhm.
And we all get to our stage of readiness at different times. We all have our own journey. We're all going along, and our splash of cold water comes at various times, different moments crystallize in our brain that, okay, I guess I need to learn some new things. We all start out doing what we think is right. But in my case, I was just really, really overwhelmed and super tired. And I just needed him to do what I said when I said it and to be happy that I asked. So I didn't realize, and I don't think, and gets back to your documentary, Licensed to Parent. Parents, no matter how much we try, we don't have any awareness of what it's going to take. I had no idea how layered and nuanced parenting really is. It's just, my gosh, there's so many layers. And you can't just speak to a child like you speak to a friend. They don't understand.
Right. And I think people have no idea what they're getting into. And the reality is, the only vetting you really go through is when they make sure the car seat is fastened in as you're leaving the hospital.
That's so
Beyond
true.
that, it's here. Have a nice life.
Isn't it? It's a real awakening, isn't it?
Yeah.
I remember being, whoa, they're just handing me this child. And, and for some of these people who don't have help, like my mom came to town and my husband was there and helpful and just surrounded by support. I don't know how these people do it. And it's truly heartbreaking. And my heart goes out to anyone who doesn't have that support. It's just backbreaking. I mean, it really is. It's difficult.
And that's really the biggest thing that was behind the film is we don't support parents enough. We'll give the dirty eyes to the woman whose child is screaming in the supermarket or running around the restaurant when you were tripping children in your book. But the reality is that's not what they need at the time. Sure, some parents deserve that because they're doing nothing to stop their child. And they might think, oh, Timmy can do whatever he wants. Let him go. But there's a lot of parents that are doing their best, but nobody's helping them.
Exactly. And I got a taste of it when my husband was gone and I was living in a small southern town and my parents were in New York City and I was by myself and my oldest was colic. And I mean, I got a taste of it, but my mom was always a call away to where I could say, can you schedule some time in a couple of weeks to come down and help me out? So in those little in-between moments where my husband was gone, I knew, the cavalry was coming and I could just get through it. But I've had those moments where I know, my gosh, what would I do if I didn't have help? And when I was pregnant with the triplets, we lived in Tucson and I was a high risk pregnancy and there was another triplet pregnancy. And this was a girl who had had sex for the first time with her boyfriend, got pregnant with triplets and her family kicked her out.
Wow.
That was, talk about dichotomy there. What is that poor girl doing? What happened there? So it's sad. It's really sad. You're right. There's so much more we could be doing to support parents.
Yeah. Now, when people come to you, it involves, I think we touched on this briefly, parents have to be willing to change because you say change yourself and your child changes. When you change, kids respond. So it's not just trying out new stuff on them. You actually have to start living it yourself, don't you?
Oh, sure. You have to really sort of deep dive yourself and ask yourself, what am I saying? What response am I getting? And then what can I do different to get a different result? And like we were saying, we are taught generation after generation that we need to change the child to get the behavior to change. And that's not the case at all. The child is responding to us. And so when we tweak our actions, our child responds. And that is just a counterintuitive thought that is, when I work with parents, that seems illogical to them because without further insight, they jump to the conclusion that it's permissive parenting or that it's, why should I change my child? This authoritarian mentality that their child has to fall in line and they're just going to keep trying to take that square peg and put it in that round hole. And they're not accepting that it's not working. So when we soften that defensiveness just a bit and get through to the parent that they hold all the, I don't like the word power, but they do hold the power to change. And that when they tweak their actions, it's sometimes such a small little change and the kids just respond immediately. It's amazing.
Yeah, I'll tell everybody right off the bat. I've already tried a few of those things. They do work. There's a
Yay.
huge
Oh, what'd you
difference. So,
try? Oh, I'd
you
love
know,
to know.
yeah, I would just, as I said to you earlier, most of it is just in the tone of the way when I'm trying to get them to do something, and how I'm speaking to them, what my expectations are, not making them feel bad about themselves because they did something that they shouldn't have done. It's just putting a
Yeah.
whole different spin on it. And I think it makes a huge difference.
Well, I'm so glad. Thank you for that feedback, especially for teenagers. It's so important to really pick and choose. And I truly loved the teenage years. If I could, and maybe I should just focus with so many parents that between 3 and 5 really get a lot of value from what I teach. But I love the teenage years because they just need a little respect. And if you give them that trust, and it's just so validating for them, and just using certain words. I have a whole script that I write out, that we work with the parents. I mean, key words like "we" and "agreed" and certain things just get that buy-in. And subconsciously, I have a chapter in there about programming, and it's powerful stuff that teenagers really respond to. And I find it fun, and it's so rewarding because, especially with teenagers, parents see quicker results with my methods than they do when they're younger, because the little kids need a little bit more repetition to take on some of these techniques. But yeah, I'm glad that you found some benefit there. Thanks.
Well, teenagers don't, they get to that age, they don't want anything to do with you. They don't respect what you're saying. And a lot of times, it's a battle every day. One of the most important things I thought you mentioned, though, is your kids have to know that you're not for sale.
Yeah.
And so it really has to be both parents. If it's a 2-parent home, you both have to be on the same page, because if dad's not for sale, but mom is, it's not going to fix anything, is it?
Yeah. Well, whoever's with the child, most is, and whoever's really home setting the rules. And so, like, I was never that mom. I couldn't be that mom that said, wait till your dad gets home. And I don't really think we have that many parents like that anymore. I think moms and dads have equal say in 2-parent homes, or even if they're in their single parents going from mom and dad's house. I think that I don't really run into a whole lot of moms or dads giving up the power to the other, like, wait till your mom gets home. But yes, it's so imperative that parents have a mindset, and I teach mindset. I'm very big about that. It's just empowering the parent to understand the consistency that they need and the role modeling they need to do. And just that, having very few rules and having that boundary, and then giving kids that freedom in between those strict boundaries to make decisions and to be able to make mistakes and so forth. But yeah, it's definitely, it's a tricky dynamic, but once you're made aware of it and you see how it works, it's great stuff.
Now, you talk about the magic mantra, I'm only in charge of me, I'm not in charge of you. And I've heard that in other terms where, don't agonize over things you can't control. And that's really one of the things that struck me the most. Is I was trying to be responsible for everything that they did and taking it personal, as opposed to just, you tell them what you want them to do. But it's not your problem if they are not doing well in school. Eventually it becomes their problem.
I'm so glad that resonated. When you do things sort of innately, and then you try to write it in a book and you try to explain it, you don't know. But I do get a lot of feedback on that. The magic mantra, and as you read in the book, it just was, but those thankless teenage years, when I was, and then times 4, all in a concentrated amount of time. It's so thankless, isn't it? They just, like you said, they don't respect what you have to say. I had to speak in bullet points. Hierarchy type, I get 30 seconds. What do I want to say? And that's why one of my favorite chapters is how to get your kids to tell you everything. That's a whole new other concept. But in the magic mantra, I just really, that took letting go of control to a whole new level for me. And I needed a mantra daily in the teenagers to go, whoop, not involved. I'm not needed. They need to solve it. I had to really come up with some sound bite that was going to help me remember that every day. Because, with 4 and, with 5, you're kind of like, if you don't have confidence like in yourself, you're going to shrivel and shrink under the pressure of these teens. Like it's a lot. But yeah, the magic mantra is super powerful. And I taught it to the kids. And I'm telling you, one of my four constantly tells me how he uses it in school and how he uses it with friends and in his social dynamic. So it's not just for parents. I teach that first half of the book is for you and your relationship with yourself. But a lot of those same things intertwine into the second half of the book with your relationship with your kids. And the magic mantra applies to you. And then we teach it to the kids. And it's powerful for them too.
Yeah, I think that's important. There used to be a show on years ago. I don't know if you ever saw it. It's not about parenting. It was called Hill Street Blues.
I've
And
heard
it was
of
just,
it. I never
it's
saw
just,
it.
it's just the way they shot it. But it was a police precinct where the head guy of the precinct, that was a captain or whatever, everything went through him. Everybody's throwing stuff at him all the time. So he's dealing with everybody's problem. And that's really what parenting is like. If you have more than one child, you're catching it from all sides. You got to be on your game.
I felt like those air traffic, those guys on the airline, that are like, this and, go this way. I would literally come out of my office where I was making decisions, immersed in my job, get up, go into the kitchen. The kids would come, what we hear? Yeah. Be home at 7, blah, 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 and you're making decisions on the fly many times with things that you have never seen before or had to deal with before. With kids, it's something different every day, which is why when I wrote this book, it was very important to me to talk mindset and foundational methods, because I don't think it's helpful to anybody to just talk about, if you're having a tantrum, do this. Parenting is so much more than just a moment's behavior. It's helping the parent come up with these foundational techniques and mindset that they can apply to every situation, because I can't possibly predict every situation. But having been through it, like I said, through, teens in every phase, I wrote this book with that in mind, that if I can arm you with those thoughts and that philosophy and empower you with that confidence and that role modeling, then you'll be able to be equipped for anything that comes your way.
Yeah, one of the toughest things is actually getting them to put their device down and look at you. I say if I had to describe my kid to a sketch artist, I would be drawing the top of his head because always looking down on a phone, and you got to get them to focus.
But they hear you. They hear you. I'm telling you, how old is your oldest?
Well, I have older children too. I have 3 older
ones. So you've
ones.
been through. Okay, so yeah, it all comes around.
Yeah.
It all comes around. You have that benefit of knowing that now. So that, all the things that you say, it goes in.
But it takes a long time for it to come back around. I mean, it really does. When they're teenagers, I remember those years with my 3 older ones. Now they're very rewarding relationships. So yeah, you really do have to just hang in there. Now, one thing you said that's interesting, know when you're winning and say nothing. It's kind of like with sales. Once you throw the number out, shut your mouth. Yeah. But parents always want to dig in another lesson or a point. And you're saying, don't do that.
No. Yeah. Oh gosh. In the back of your mind, if you're thinking I'm winning, just like I said, if there's some of these little hacks to kind of cut through that moment to get you to stop talking. Yes. Know when you're winning. Help me in so many ways. And for example, my daughter, great kid, but her room was a pigsty. Nothing I was going to do was going to change that. I mean, it was atrocious, and nothing. My boys, spotless and organized. And yeah, I had my moments where I tried to tell her, go clean. You can't do this until you clean. I tried everything, but you know what? It just wasn't going to stick. So what I have to do is I have to stop and ask myself, does she have a good set of friends? Is she doing a sport? Does she have a job? Does she have good grades? She was firing on every cylinder, but the one with her room, right? Why? I'm winning. I am winning. I have a teenage daughter who wants to go on dates with me every week, to the movies, and she tells me everything, and we have a great relationship, and let it go. I'm winning. So just stop and take stock of the moment and of what you're looking to do. And in the book, I have that example. You ask your son to go empty the dishwasher and he's grumbling under his breath. Your instinct is to go, hey, whoa, what did you say? But he's on his way to empty the dishwasher. He's doing what you asked. You're winning. Knowing you're winning, let that mumbling under his breath go, because it doesn't mean anything.
That really struck with me too. I mean, I pointed out instances where I maybe was getting him to do what I want, but you're trying to throw that lesson in there along the way.
Yeah,
and
we
you
do
don't
that.
have to do that. Yeah, we all are guilty of that. And another thing that I thought was interesting, if your kids are talking to you, you're fortunate your daughter was telling you a lot of stuff. You can't react to it, right? You can't judge. You can't make them pay for that honesty that they're sharing with you.
Huge, huge. You cannot make them pay for the honesty, and we do it. We all do it. But one of the biggest things that I really teach parents is, looking for patterns and parenting in advance. And if you're parenting in advance, it means you're prepared. So we're prepared for big picture stuff as much as we can be, so that when these little moments come up, we have our mindset ready. And we're already pre-thinking about how we're going to respond or what we're going to say. And so then you're prepared for that moment. Right. So yeah, it's definitely a way of just thinking ahead and knowing how we're going to get that child to respond or to get us to talk. We have to brand ourselves as unshockable. And no matter what, I'm in my mind going, holy, whoa, and the teen years are really about filing everything away. It's like the puppet strings in the back. We are like literally behind the curtain with the puppet strings. And then we have to shape it and we have to reattack. And it's very, layered and multidimensional when they get to the teen years. But literally, you're unshockable, and part of the stress for my husband and I was just that, we always had ears listening. So I couldn't be like, when he got home from work, you're not going to believe this. We had to go out to dinner. So we had freedom to talk, because every day is some new revelation of things that you're learning. It's just funny.
Well, I think one of the challenges with parents, and I know your husband being in the military, probably super organized, you had a million things going on, that when kids come to you with stuff and their problems you can easily solve, you can't just fix everything for them and make it easy for them. You have to find a way to let them figure it out. But a lot of times it's easier for us to solve the problem and fix it than it is to go through that process.
So true, especially as an entrepreneur, and I don't have any employees, so I just do everything myself. And I did have to overcome that, which is why, I talk about ego, letting go of control, not doing guilt, all of these traits and personality traits and characteristics that I talk about are things that I had to learn were detrimental when they came to my parenting. We have to know where to let go. We have to know that, again, my mindset is to grow independent, accountable kids. And I can't do that if I'm solving their problems. And if you can learn how to structure your home as much as possible, like the real world, to where they're having to be accountable for their actions under the safety net of your home, where you aren't solving that, by the time they get 18, they're wise beyond their years. And I saw this work with my own. By the time they got to college and they all went out of state, they're all out of town. Just how much more, big picture thinking they are now, that they don't have to go out and be rebellious, because it just, they don't have to prove anything to anybody. So it really works.
Didn't you have them making their lunches at 4 years old?
Yeah. Oh, yes. I did. I did.
Yeah.
Oh, and you can't believe how capable they really are capable of doing it. If you set your home with all the, the bread, and they can choose the kind of bread they want. Here's what I expect. I put the account, here's my rules. You need to have a sandwich, you need to have a fruit, you need to have, a juice. Here's what you need to do. I'm the leader. I'm setting the tone. Here's the boundaries, and your freedom within the boundaries. Choose your bread. They get to choose. They told me through all the years, Mom, you can't believe so-and-so throws all her, her mom makes her lunch and she puts leftovers and she does all of this. She never eats it. She gives away all of her lunch. My kids ate their lunch because they made it. Mm-hmm. And they would be responsible for, hey, so-and-so brought, some type of flavored something to school. Can you buy this? Yeah, put it on the list. Yep, sure. They're in charge of, helping me build the list. I'll go buy it. It's on their level. And I times 4 kids. Yeah. I'll clean out your lunchbox, but you're making your lunch, and it worked. And they did their own laundry too at like 5 and 6.
Wow. Send them over here. That's awesome.
Well, it's just set it up and train them, and they do it. The younger, the better.
I believe that. Now, wisdom and common sense are teachable, trainable. And what's more, it's our responsibility as parents to do just that. Talk about that.
Well, like I was just saying, certain tactics that I used to try to get my kids to become wise beyond their years. It was very deliberate on my part, I'm a very big picture person, so I would always try to get the kids to be making decisions as much as possible, and then teaching them the ways to make those decisions, and looking at, awareness, and looking around you, and using free information to come in and inform the big picture. So this is what I do in my business. This is how I run my household. It's just that I have it's this dynamic decision process where if I'm in the moment and I'm in the weeds, I always rise up to the big picture, put it through the filter of where am I going with this? Do I really even care about this? Run it through this filter and then make my decision, which is more informed. And so these are some of the things that I taught the kids to do to make decisions, which gave them wisdom. And I'm just big about wisdom and connecting to your gut, and, looking at stepping back and looking at trends, looking at patterns, making decisions on that. How does that fit into what you think? Should you change your mind about that? How do you think that's going to affect you down the line? Always thinking toward the future, never in the fishbowl of the moment. We all tend to be in those weeds, and it doesn't really do you any good. If you can teach a child to go, if then, if this, then that, then you're getting them to think with wisdom.
Yeah. Now you said be aware of your own personal tripwires and how they affect your position on punishment. So there's some things that might trigger me that maybe it's not worth punishing them for, but it's because it's just something that matters to me.
Sure. Yeah. If you're really fastidious and you need your house really, really neat, and you can't, if there's socks on the floor and that really, really is your thing and that bothers you, then you might tend to be apt to punish your child for that. Whereas that's yours. You own that. That's you. You have that idiosyncrasy, know that, admit that about yourself, and just let it go. You're only in charge of you. There's a fine line between parenting and not letting them be a pig. Like if you've got certain things that really bother you, and we all have those things, know that about yourself, and don't apply that to everyone else in the home. And this makes you a better partner too, better leader, better boss. These awarenesses trickle into all the other aspects of your life.
Yeah, that to me, what I thought was the most interesting thing about the book. I mean, everybody can
really?
criticize. Well, yeah. Well, it's that how they apply to other things, how things you do and the impact that it has. I mean, I pulled a lot of other stuff out there that made me think of the consequences of things that I was doing as a parent, and what you should let go of and what you should not let go of. And, I don't know if those, maybe they weren't the intended messages, but, I was sitting there applying them.
No, I love it. I think that's great. I think as long as you're willing to ask yourself, there are no right or wrong answers. All it is just creating a mechanism to get you to get in touch with yourself and ask yourself how you're showing up for your child as a parent. So just asking yourself the question and giving yourself an honest answer that's like, yeah, I am really, really, it really makes me angry to see dishes in the sink, whatever it is. So I maybe that's a bad example because that's a household thing where, but like if it's a real, just a personal thing that really bothers you, are you punishing your child for something that is your own issue? And it's just, again, that self-awareness and knowing where you need to lead and where it bleeds together. You're only in charge of you, and is my idiosyncrasy bleeding into what everyone else is doing and how I'm parenting them, and am I punishing them for it? Like, it's just silly.
So if you had to give one piece of advice to somebody who's thinking about having children, or maybe somebody who's mired in a bunch of children, so something that could really just maybe spark them and go and turn it around for them, what would you tell them?
So much. I think the overriding thing is learning to trust yourself. I mean, it really comes to, it's a relationship with yourself first. Parenting starts with your relationship with yourself, and trust is super important. Trusting your gut, trusting that what's best for your family, trusting that you can build and hone that relationship with your kids. I do a lot of reinforcing that confidence and that empowerment with the parent. And when the parent is right with that, everything else follows. I know that doesn't help their moment right now. People want some magical, like how to handle a behavior or something, but it's just always keep the big picture. It's a mindset, and trust yourself, because I find that If you're controlling, you don't trust, you have fear. If you've got guilt, you don't trust, you have fear. If your ego is involved, that's a defense mechanism. You don't trust, you have fear. It's all stemming from not trusting yourself and maybe looking outside and going, what are they doing? And how is that working for them? Who cares? Shore yourself up.
All right. So how do people get your book? Where's the best place for them to find it?
Amazon, I'm on iTunes, Barnes and Noble. So yeah, any of those places.
And just so we can say the name of the book again.
Secrets to Parenting Without Giving a Fuck.
Absolutely. And I would tell people it's highly worth reading. It's not one of those books that's going to take you 2 months to read because it's 5,000 pages of scientific mumbo jumbo. It's down in the trenches stuff that can really help people. And I thought it was fantastic. So
thank you. I appreciate that.
I really enjoyed it. And then you have a website. How can people reach out to you there?
Yeah. AskMomParenting.com. And on Instagram and Facebook, follow me on either platform, Ask Mom Parenting.
And when's the next book coming out? What's it going to be?
Oh boy. I don't know. I'm trying to work on a yelling course that people can download. I've got a lot of stuff going on, but I just came up with a title for my next book. I think it's going to be on leadership. So we'll see. I'll keep you posted.
Awesome. I will look forward to it because I'm sure I'll give it a read. Sue, thank you so much for coming on today.
I appreciate you having me. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to this week's Move the World podcast. There are a ton of books that are out there on parenting. And as a parent, having read Sue's book, I'm seeing how the things that she talked about in the book have already made a difference for me. So if you're a parent who's feeling overwhelmed by all the things that are coming at you, try doing something about it. The theme for my films and podcasts is don't just continue as you are and do nothing. Do something. We'll see you next time.